The WNBA is off to an exciting start. Contenders are dominating, stars are becoming superstars, and best of all, a talented rookie class is bringing more eyes to the sport than ever. Now that we're about 10 games into the season, let's see where the league stands, starting with those rookies. You of course can't talk about WNBA rookies without talking about the highs and lows of Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark's first 12 games have been a bit of a mixed bag. She scored 20 points in her debut, albeit on terrible efficiency from the field, with 10 turnovers. Her second game was worse, with only 9 points. But ever since then, Clark has been giving fans what they want, at least in flashes. She scored 22 against the very good defense of the New York Liberty on fantastic shooting splits and arguably her best game of the season. The only real blemish being, she still had 8 turnovers. Which, yes, is a lot, but something that is to be expected from a rookie point guard. In their rematch versus the Sun, Clark scored 17 points, but the Fever as a team seemed like they were finally starting to gel as a unit. Clark had less turnovers, she was getting some nice assists, finding the open shooter, making the right plays. She even hit a couple of her signature logo 3-point shots, in high pressure situations I might add. Versus Seattle, the Fever got as close to winning a basketball game as you can, without actually winning it. However, ultimately, they fell short due to the veteran presence of Nneka Ogwumike. The Fever did manage to get their first win against yet another young team, that being the LA Sparks, and if anyone was concerned that Brink was starting to overtake Clark in the Rookie of the Year race, these games quieted those fears. The rest of Clark's games would be wildly varied, in both scoring and efficiency. Despite the ups and downs of her first few games, the Fever start with a 3-9 record. This result has received many reactions from both people immediately calling Clark a bust, and those wanting to blame everyone else around her. But at the end of the day, even though the turnovers are an area to be worked on for sure, I don't think any reasonable WNBA fan can look at these rookie stats and seriously call Clark anything but the rightful number 1 pick. Also, the Indiana Fever undoubtedly had the hardest starting schedule of any team. Not only did they have to play the most games in a very short period of time, they also had to play against really good opponents. The Fever played against the semi-finalist defensive monster that is the Connecticut Sun twice, as well as the New York Liberty, who were 2 games away from winning it all last year. The same New York Liberty with the reigning MVP Breanna Stewart, who dropped 30 on the entire state of Indiana. They also had to play my beloved Aces, who quite frankly, they stood no chance against. What's also worth mentioning is that ever since Clark first stepped on the court, she has been getting double teamed, like every time. Now I'm not saying this as an excuse for any of her shortcomings, because it isn't one, but I am saying that teams are giving Clark much more respect than any other rookie, and there's something very telling in that fact. Clark is already a great player off just her passing alone, but what's so cool about her popularity is that her fans are being introduced to so many other great players as well. Not only players on the opposing team, but also her teammates. Players like Aaliyah Boston, like Kelsey Mitchell. Players whose skill will only be amplified as the season progresses and everyone gets more used to playing with each other. Kelsey Mitchell is such a fun player, and you've gotta love the energy she brings. As clutch as those Clark shots were in their first win versus the Sparks, the real savior of that game was Mitchell, with her 10 points over the course of the fourth quarter. Aaliyah Boston, while normally great, has gotten off to a very slow start this year. It's taking time for her to adjust to the new system, and in time, I have no doubt that she will look more like her Rookie of the Year self again. However, she is the last person you want to heave this Hail Mary shot at the end of the Seattle game that would have won it. I'm not necessarily even blaming Boston here, but did Mitchell or Clark not get open in time for the inbound pass? Literally anyone else has a better chance of making this shot. Oh well. Also, real quick before I get off the Fever here, shout out to Temi Fagbenle. She's been a great vet off the bench for the Fever, and the best part is that the Fever acquired them from overseas, so they didn't have to trade anything to get her. Overall, Caitlin Clark is having some expected rookie troubles, but clearly getting better and more comfortable day by day. Will the Fever end up in the playoffs? I don't know, but they'll be better than the Mystics, that's for sure. If you're enjoying this video, consider subscribing. If not, why are you still here? Anyway, back to it. Angel Reese, and more specifically the Chicago Sky as a whole, are having a very interesting start. The Sky drafted 2 former NCAA champions, that being Angel Reese and Camila Cardoso. But Cardoso has been sidelined for the first 3 weeks of the season due to a shoulder injury, so Reese has often been playing by herself with Elizabeth Williams at center. It'll be interesting to see how the team dynamic changes as Cardoso starts to get regular minutes, and we'll be able to see how the rookies play off of each other. Getting back to Jess Reese though, she's been pretty consistent in doing what I expected. While her efficiency needs to be better for a player that mainly shoots within 5 feet of the basket, her rebounding has been great, and Reese is leading rookies in free throws attempted and made, with all the contact she draws playing down low. Any other year, Angel Reese would be at the top of the list for Rookie of the Year. And while she's not the front runner, I guess third is pretty high up there. I do say third because in my opinion, the second best rookie this year has been Cameron Brink. Cameron Brink's offense has been very inconsistent, but her defense, pretty much from day one, has been immaculate. The deciding factor in many of the games the Sparks have won has been her crucial defense down the stretch. She is already an elite shot blocker, and while maybe she doesn't average as many points as Clark, get as many free throws as Reese, or shoot as efficiently from the field as her teammate, her tenacity is unprecedented. Now before Angel Reese fans get mad at me, let me just say, I think there are perfectly valid arguments for either player being the second best rookie right now. Just personally, from the games I've watched, I've been very impressed by Brink. And hey, don't worry LA Sparks fans. If she doesn't win Rookie of the Year, she's got a real chance of winning Defensive Player of the Year, which would be awesome. Speaking of LA, let's talk about Rickea Jackson. While not really in consideration for Rookie of the Year, I've been very impressed by Rickea Jackson's play so far. She's a great spark plug off the bench with incredible efficiency for a player in year one. If she keeps this up, she'll play her way into the starting lineup. She's been very impactful in the games I've watched, and I want to see her get even more minutes. Moving on from the rookies and talking more about the league at large, let's talk about the top dogs. While it's too early to call, allow me to call it anyway. The top 3 teams this year look like they'll be the same as last year. The Liberty have gone 11-2, with their only bad loss being against Chicago. But aside from that one game, the Liberty have been crushing the competition. The competition may have been the current worst 2 teams in the league and the Storm without Nneka Ogwumike to start the year, so maybe don't get too excited, but nevertheless, crush them they did. On the other hand, the Aces have gotten off to a 5-4 start, losing to the Mercury in a game where Kalia Copper absolutely went off. They also lost to the Dream, who made every Aces fan realize we need Chelsea Gray to come back now. The Aces really miss her playmaking, and the sooner she comes back from injury, the better. The Connecticut Sun have a stellar 10-1 record so far, with their only loss being to the New York Liberty. However, like New York, they too were feeding off the bottom dwellers of the league to start the year. The Suns sit in an interesting spot, however. Most everyone agrees that New York and Las Vegas are the 2 best teams. Although if Connecticut keeps this up and the Aces continue to struggle, we're going to have to start asking some serious questions. But the Suns still sit in my mind as the definitive 3rd best team. They are the gatekeepers that separate the playoff hopefuls from the true contenders. While these 3 teams to me very much seem like the best, there is going to be a rat race for the ensuing 4 through 8 seeds, and I can't wait to watch it unfold. I genuinely think any team whose name isn't the Washington Mystics could be in the playoffs this year. Now don't get me wrong, some teams are looking more likely than others, but this early into the season, all of that could change very quickly. These middle seeds are going to fluctuate a lot as the year goes on, and it'll make for an exciting playoff race. The Storm struggled to start the year, but ever since they got their big 3 healthy and had time to work on their chemistry, they have been a monster, going on a 6-game win streak before ultimately falling to the Lynx. They are dangerous. Nneka Ogwumike is back with a vengeance, and pairing her with Skylar Diggins-Smith and Jewell Loyd almost feels unfair. I told Mercury fans not to worry about last year, and what do you know? After adding Kalia Copper and Natasha Cloud, they have been excellent. Scratch that, they were excellent. Until they beat the Aces, after which it's been a struggle bus. I still think they'll end the year in the playoffs, but it's far from guaranteed. To the Mercury's credit though, Griner only just returned from her toe injury, so they should only get better. Regardless, you gotta love Taurasi still being a contributor at 41 years old. It's just great to still see the GOAT drop 30 every now and then. I just love it. I've gotta give props to the Lynx too. Nafissa Collier is really trying to make an MVP case. And if other acts like Aja Wilson and Alyssa Thomas pipe down, she just might get it. It's not just her though. The Lynx traded for Courtney Williams and Natisha Heidemann. 2 fantastic pickups. I loved Heidemann's game back in Connecticut, and Courtney Williams is just solid as a playmaker, doing exactly what the Lynx need her to. The Lynx look like they're making a push this year. If any team is going to crack into that upper echelon of contender, it's going to be one of these two. Quick side note on the Mystics. I know I keep making fun of how bad they are, and don't get me wrong, they are cooked. Your season is over. It ended before it even started. After Deladon retired, you should have known it was going to be this bad. But to be honest, I actually kind of like the Mystics. Deladon was one of my favorite players to watch, and that 2019 title run was pretty cool. I hope Mystics fans hold on to that moment, because it is going to be a while before you're competitive again. Also, why did you select Aaliyah Edwards over Angel Reese? Like, what? That doesn't even make sense. But oh well. They'll suck this year and get a high pick. Maybe they'll get Paige. Huh. Paige in Washington. I kinda like the sound of that. I don't know what's going on with Dallas. With one of their 2 stars injured, I expected them to struggle, and at first, they weren't. And then they were, and now it just seems like they're just trying to weather the storm while they wait for Satu Sabli to get back from injury. Which, I guess fair enough. It's just been a bit disappointing considering how good they were last year. Although, maybe it's also a byproduct of this year being generally more stacked than last year. I already touched on the rookies briefly, but the Sparks have a chance to do something special here. Not this season, of course, they probably won't make the playoffs, but if they get a high pick next year and are able to draft someone like Paige Beckers, then all bets are off. The Sparks' future is bright, and their present, while not as bright, is at least fun to watch. The WNBA is just getting started, and with all the new talent flooding into the league, the state of women's basketball has never looked better. Hey you, that's the end of the video. Tell me if you liked it, and let me know if you want me to keep making WNBA content. Y'all clearly liked that last video, so any and all feedback is appreciated.